Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Tracy and this is Pasquale.
Hey!
Today we're going to be talking more about the astrological elements: fire, water, air, and earth.
Yes.
And so I'm going to let you
Before we start,
yeah.
How many of you did the little exercise of checking what our strength or weakest element is? If you haven't, take a second, write it down. We'll give you a second.
Are we going to share that now or later?
No, we'll share it in a minute.
Okay.
Stay tuned.
Okay. So what we're going to review first is Pasquale's going to talk about some of the strengths and weaknesses, right, that go along with how the elements match up and what that looks like, how that manifests in our life kind of behaviorally.
Yes. So what you want to do is when you look at the little chart, you want to look at, just go across fire, how many elements, how many planets are in each of the elements, right? And just make a little number, right? So 4, 4, 3, 2, whatever that would look like, right? And by looking at that, it gives you a sense of kind of what is happening, right? I have found that people that have a lot of fire and a lot of air typically have anxiety. It's just a common thing, right? And sometimes because of the fire and air, depending on where the number is, it could be that I'm explosive before I get anxious, right? So the anxiety builds, I explode, right? That could be a sign of that.
Would that also be people who kind of shove their emotions down and ignore it until they finally explode and then it's overly intense?
So the emotional side is that if you find that you have fire, air, with a water, right? And those are your three common strong ones, and it could be 4-3-2, 4-3-3, 4-4-3, whatever, right? I know I'm talking a lot of numbers, sounds like Friends, but not that way. But if you see that, it could mean.
God, I remember that episode.
It was a great episode. So that right there could show you I have anxiety, and when I explode, it gets into this depressive state, right? So I can go from an anxiety to a depression. Or if the element of water is stronger with a fire, that could be my emotions create my anxiety.
Okay.
Right? Or you can do a lot of air with a lot of earth, and that creates this nervousness, right? I'm a nervous person. I know someone in my life who's always nervous. Oh my God, that's going to be bad. It's no, it's going to be fine. We just got to balance your element. Is what my typical response is. But those are, so there's different ways that the elements combined and working together will create or bring about things, right? And I always like to paint a picture with my clients when I do it, because I think sometimes it's the picture that kind of helps people understand, right?
Yeah.
So we're gonna talk through mine or yours first?
We can do mine.
Okay, so let's do Tracy's. Tracy, what is your strongest element?
Water.
Yes. How many got water? Good job. What is your missing or weakest element?
Earth.
Earth. Right? And if anyone knows Tracy, she created a beautiful facility at Free Spirit, right? And if you've been to Free Spirit, what's the one thing you see? Earth. It is earth.
Everywhere.
It is a place to live. There is animals, and there's trees and flowers and bushes, and her husband Dave is amazing in keeping it all going because it's a lot of work, but that's a lot of earth, right? And so if we go into yesterday's example, right, where is Tracy drawn, right? Well, she's drawn to the earth.
And I grew up in South Florida. On the East Coast, always out on the boat, in the ocean, several times.
Which is your comfortable element,
right?
So it's the peace is there, right?
So leaving that water and then being drawn to Arizona, where it's the hot desert. I never thought I would like it at all, but luckily I've come to appreciate the beauty, and I do feel much more stable and balanced.
Totally, it creates the balance in you, right? So if we look at Tracy's, right? So she has. I'm going to paint the picture because this is always a good one, right? She has air, as air is a strong element for her, right? It's her second strongest. Her connection with people, right? And so if you know her, you know that she's easy to talk to. People always talk to her, right? So she has that air, right? And then she has fire, which is low. But the air and fire, what happens when air and fire connect?
They balance each other?
No, they explode.
Oh.
right? Air feeds fire.
Dang.
So it creates more fire. There's no balance here. Not yet. So it creates more fire, right? And so like the air and the fire create more, right? And it's not explosive in the sense that you explode and then like you get anxious. You just, the air will create anxiety for you,
Yeah.
right?
Well, and I do struggle with anxiety. It's much better now, but that's been kind of most of my life. And then also ADHD.
Which is air and fire exploding.
Interesting.
Right? So you start to see that, right? So now let's paint the picture, right? So you have this air and fire exploding, right? Her strongest element is water, and she has 0 earth, nothing. So where is she?
I have 0 balance. I have 0 stability.
No. In the picture, you're just underwater, right? You're underwater trying to get to the top because the fire is keeping you warm
That's where
in
I would
the water.
prefer to be.
Totally. But you created a place that has so much earth
Yeah.
that all of that stability is like your body is now rebalancing itself. It's recalibrating, right?
Yeah.
So that fire that you're experiencing is actually the earth is kind of holding you up so that you're not feeling as anxious or as depressive, right? Like you have less of that.
Right. That is true.
And your body is like kind of recalibrated.
And I just think it's so interesting how we're unconsciously drawn to that element that we're either low in or missing.
Every
It's pretty
time.
awesome.
Every
It's
time.
very trippy.
Every time. And so like that's a good way to look at it, right? Like you can kind of see. So if I was talking to Tracy, I'd be like, listen, here's how you need to kind of balance your element, right? So let's say you live in Alaska or in a place that like Keys, right? Where there's a lot of water, not a lot of earth. And you know, there's always earth everywhere, right? Because we're living on it. We have to be on it. But the more earth, the stronger your element becomes, right? Or that missing element becomes. So things that you can do to balance it would be get a plant, right? Get a plant for your house. Put a plant in your bedroom, in the place you're always at, in your office. That will help bring in that earth element. It'll start to bring stability. Other things that you can do is cook, if you like to cook. Earth people, no earth, no cooking. It's just a rule. They don't enjoy it.
Things alive except for my animals.
But animals bring in earth, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So you have that, right? Like you create that balance just by what you're drawn to.
Right.
And if anyone knows Tracy, she's an animal lover. She protects them all. And so like it's great, but that's her earth missing element, right? She's drawn to kind of that stability, creating stability.
Right.
It's a huge thing,
Yeah.
right? So now we'll talk about mine. How many of you have guessed what my missing element is and what my strongest element is? So my missing element is actually earth. I have 0. Nothing.
We're both the same.
We're both homeless. We don't know where we live. We have no purpose.
I don't even know where I am.
Don't
half the
ask us to
time.
hold on to $1 because we're going to spend it. Like, we have no earth.
No, I will lose it. I won't spend
Or
it.
lose it. I'll spend it. Give me $1, it's gone. I have
Oh my
lost it
gosh.
though too, because I'm like, where did I put that money? And then it always shows up in the wash, but it
Oh,
wasn't
yeah.
in my pocket
I'm
before.
like, we'll find it. It'll turn up somewhere.
Yes. That is not the earth element talking, I'll
No.
tell you that.
No.
Because earth people wouldn't allow that to happen, right? But my weakest is earth. And so if you know me as a person, I have no stability. I am the least stable. Like there's no stability for me. I just will be real about that.
He's like the flighty airhead that we were talking
Yes.
about in the
So
last
what's my
one.
strongest element?
I actually keep you stable, which is really
She
sad.
does. It's the truth. Because of all those animals you have. You have all that life around you. I have no life. No, I do. I've created stability. But my strongest element is actually air. And so if you know me, like you drop me in the center of any room and I will be talking to at least one person. And then more people will just start talking to me and then they'll start telling me their life story. Some will start crying. It's just common. Like I will never forget the story of all the flights I used to take when I worked corporate. And I'd be on the flight going, I'm just going to watch Game of Thrones. And then the person
people
next to
talking
me
to you.
starts crying because they're sad. And I listen because I'm an air person, right? And I have no stability. So I'm just like, yes, that works, right? It's my life. But then my next strongest is actually a tie between fire and water, right? And so fire and air again create anxiety. It creates this burst, right? But the way mine is that because it's so strong, a lot of times if I blow up, it's an emotional outburst. And it's because my fire and water are so balanced that it creates that, right? But if you look at the picture, what does it mean for me? My air and my fire are so strong. I'm always in this balloon floating in the sky and typically feeling, right? Because the water is so strong in me that I feel, and I feel deeply. And so again, that's me being an empath, right?
It's interesting too that we were both drawn to some like career professions. You're going to be drawn to like the thing that I feel like what we're drawn to feeds to our strengths of being able to connect with people and communicate.
Yes.
But also and feel and have that compassion. But there's also that it provides us that stability, because in doing therapy, we also have to maintain our own emotions in helping others. I mean, if a client starts crying, I can't allow that in and feel that and then start crying myself, because then it becomes about me.
Yes.
Right? So it's interesting that in our career choices, it's providing us that stability for our weaknesses.
Yes, it's 100% true, and it's also our strength, right? Because like with both of us, air is pretty strong.
Yeah.
It allows us to connect to people easily,
Right.
right? So people, it's just comforting. It's good to have someone that you can talk to that is real.
Yeah.
Right. We're not like the stuffed shirt.
And that's just very easy to talk
Yeah,
about.
it just makes it simple. But I'll tell you, for me, one of the things that I've learned over the years, and people who've like known me over the years, for the like past 30 years, it's been a lot, my journey has really been a lot about creating that balance in my life, right? And so one of the funny stories I always share is when I was born, one of my aunts gave my parents a plant, right? On the day I was born, they gave them a plant. And it's this plant that like will live forever, right? And so, my mom raised it, she took care of it, and my mom, nurtured it, and it became this beautiful plant. When I moved out, she gave it to me. She's like, okay, it's your plant. Take care of it. 1 week.
I was going to say,
dead.
I know where this story's going.
I killed that so bad. Like, and when I brought it back to my mom, she's like, because like my mom's very earthy. She's like, oh, if you just cut this and you could regrow it by putting it in water and roots grow, it's like this amazing thing that I do not have. Yeah. And she's like, no, this is really dead. She's like, just throw it away. And I was like, oh my God, I killed the one thing that someone gave at the day of my birth, right? So I'm living longer than that plant. Horrible. But when I learned that I needed that plant, right? And naturally, I have no earth in me. So I'm not going to have stability. Plants aren't going to grow. Like, I'm a horrible cook. Don't do it.
Yeah.
You won't enjoy it
at all.
I despise cooking. It's actually a job for me.
I agree.
But what I've learned is like I've now have plants, right? And so like I had to bring plants into my life. And so I have plants everywhere I go. Even when I was working in the corporate field, I had a plant that I would always like keep at my desk, and on the weekends I'd bring it to the sun, and then I'd bring it back to my desk. And so it was just there, and the whole reason for it is it was creating stability for me, right? It allows me that grounding. It reminds me, it connects with me.
Yeah.
And allows me to do that. Now, other things, totally. I will hike, I'll go out for a walk. Anything that gets me to connect with nature is a good way to bring up that earth element, right? Releasing air.
Outdoors.
It's so important.
Yeah.
For someone who is lacking
Needs
earth or air, outdoors is great.
Yeah.
Right? Someone who's lacking water, go swim, right? Go to the beach. Make sure you take a bathtub.
We have a little fountain. Like
Fountains are
in the
amazing.
house. Yeah. Or what about a fish tank?
Fish are amazing. Like anything that has that element present. And what I always say is if you're going to incorporate an element into your life, like a fish tank, put it in a room where you spend all your time, right? If you put it in the fish tank room and you never go in it except when you feed it, it's not really going to create more of an elemental balance for you, right? But if you put it in the room next to the TV where you're always watching, it's going to start to raise that energy, right? And so what you do is by raising these elements slowly, right? By incorporating them into your life, your other elements aren't working hard to balance you.
Like overcompensate.
So exactly, they're not overcompensating. So it becomes very, very simple, right? And so like one of the things that people always say to me is, wow, every time between sessions, you're good. Like you don't really need moment to leave. Or my intuitive clients who are with me are like, I don't feel the last person at all. Well, of course you don't, because I focus everything on me connecting with the earth, right? I know I lack it, so I need to let it go, right? I can't absorb, so I need to release. And so that's kind of why when you say like we chose this, totally did, because it helps create the balance for us.
Yeah, that makes sense. And when we started becoming closer friends, we would always refer to each other as like twins. And it's so funny. We even send each other the little twin
every time, the little twin picture.
Yeah. But it's so interesting because our elements are almost the same.
Yeah, they're very almost identical.
Yeah. That's right.
Which is great because it helps us get along.
Yeah.
But
we have fun with each other and we understand each other without having to explain much.
Yes.
Which is nice.
But we don't have a lot of balance between, like we create balance because like Tracy likes to really get that earth element going and keep me really structured, which is amazing.
Yeah.
But like it that takes us work, right? Whereas for us, being together, it's very simple because our elements are so the same.
Right.
And that's a great lead-in into next week's, where we're actually going to talk about how you can create balance in your relationships and kind of look at different elements.
Right, because you and I wouldn't do well for several different reasons.
We would kill each other. We have a lot of fun. We'll have a great time. We'll be having the best parties. But no, life would not be good. Someone would probably end up dead. Or tied up.
I'm not going to go there. Okay, so, but with our partners, right, it's really important because a lot of times we could be drawn to maybe somebody that is like our opposite, and this is what we're going to go into with more detail, and it's interesting because I guess that's why they say like we're drawn to opposites attract, right?
It's the elemental opposites that bring us together.
But it's really, those opposites can either help, we can allow it to balance us out, or it can create a very toxic relationship and where we're constantly like at each other and picking on each other. And there's like a lack of communication and a lack of understanding. So this is really, I think the next one's going to be really interesting with just general compatibility in our partners.
Yeah, and
friendships.
And how we make it compatible, right? Like, because that's the key is that as with anything, there's it's not like Advil, right? You can't just go to the cabinet, take an Advil, and your elements are balanced. Everything is great. You have to work at it, right?
And that would be a great.
I just trademarked that. All
right.
We'll see you next time.
All right. Thank you.